Hi, welcome to Middle East in Crisis. I'm Neslihan Erishkin, and let's begin. So today's video is, what is the Orient? So simply put, the Orient is what's west of Europe, but there's a lot more connotations with that term, especially through academia and historiography, but also through cultural attitudes, which we'll be exploring. The Orient was viewed as a land clouded in mystery, myth, and magic in European eyes. It's how Middle Eastern societies, cultures, and religions were represented in the Middle East, which was a blend of fiction and reality, painted with broad strokes, and forgetting the nuances between each culture and religion. And so these representations of Muslim culture were harmful at best in our views, and can still be seen today on how we study, talk, and think about the Middle East. You may be hearing me talk about the Middle East when I introduce this as, what is the Orient? So the Orient is the Middle East, simply put, and the study of the Orient is called Orientalism, and with all its fallacies along with that. So I choose not to call the Middle East the Orient because I see the study of the Orient and study of the Middle East as two separate things. So I think with the Middle East, I hope that comes with having a much more sophisticated view and a nuanced view of the cultures and religions and people there, because they deserve as much nuance and the study of them as any other civilization. So the Orient, as this is put, is pretty much just the Middle East, but it also could include Asia and the Far East. But you might have heard the term Orient if you're into studying Middle Eastern history in reference to the book Orientalism by Edward Said, which was published in 1978. Yes, you heard me right, 1978. I was pretty shocked to find out that book was published so recently. I know some people are like, 1978 is not that recent, but it is. And especially how he just absolutely attacks his other fellow, professors. So his book was pretty groundbreaking in how he talks, it represents Western views on the Middle East, and he attacks it from every direction. The man was absolutely savage when he took on the director of the Center of Middle Eastern Studies at Harvard, Professor Gibbs, in his book Arab Minds. Said called it an aversion of Muslims through the thought process of rationalism. That's on page 107, if anyone's curious. So Professor Gibbs refers to Islam as Mohammedism. And I'll also be exploring what rationalism is. It's pretty much the scientific approach of studying, spiritual and poetic works. But there's a lot more to it. But it's kind of the way how Western, aka Christian, scholars would study Islam, which I'll be talking about in a later video. So I won't give my opinion there, but I will give a little bit of my opinion that no religious document should be looked at through the eyes of rationalism. But enough said with that. So back to Said's book, The Orientalism, he explores the reasons why we have the term Orientalism, to have this single word to characterize a massive stretch of land. It believes that we Western readers and scholars never looked at the Middle East or Asia or the Far East as its own geopolitical area equal to Europe, but rather that we always saw it as an inferior, an alien land that needed to be taught civility and the modernism of Europe, and to hopefully one day it might be able to achieve European excellence, whatever that means. But however, we think they're inferior, but we're totally fine, over-sexualizing and objectifying women of the Orient. Just look at the work Turkish Bath by Jean August Dominique Indris' work, which he depicts Turkish women in a Turkish bath in a hypersexualized manner. They're mostly all nude. He's not the only one who depicts Middle Eastern women in this fashion. It became a trope at times, and this hypersexualized manner became fetishized in the West. This can just be seen in like diary entries, and I'll be going through that later on. I'm not going to spend all my time there because I could go on a very long rant, which you guys might be hearing in the future. Okay, representation of the landscape was also tied into this idea that they were less modernized and primitive, that we looked at the landscape and the cityscape of the Orient as stuck in a bygone era, essentially, that it was preserved and stuck in time and has not adapted to the century that they're studying, and they don't have the rich architectural history and culture and attitudes like the West does. Because if it doesn't look like Versailles, obviously it's not sophisticated. But this phenomenon is not just a 20th century phenomenon that is unique to Edward Said's time, reading works like the Arab Minds. This is a tradition that goes way back. Back to the ancient Greeks with the work, the Persians, which I take some debate on because, to be honest, one culture writing poorly about a rival culture is definitely not uncommon. But the modern idea of what we have of Orientalism can be traced back to the 18th century with intellectuals like William Jones and Abraham Felician and Keys Duperon. Someone's gonna say I'm pronouncing that incorrect. I know that I am. Kind of transformed Orientalism and the study of Orientalism by studying art and literary representations of the Middle East in this science and objective form, and it made it all academic. And so with this goal of knowing the Orient better than the Orient themselves, which is extremely patronizing and very insane. And this can be seen in the turn of the century in 1910 with Lord Balfour's speech, The House of Commons, which just is something else, which justifies the British presence and involvement in Egypt, and which I'll also be talking about in a later video about how just the British presence in the Middle East and is why we have it today. Okay, so, but they justified that they needed to be in Egypt because they needed to bestow upon this gift to the Egyptians of British imperialism and civility and society, and we needed to teach them how to be modern and erase the stains of the Orient. But this, once again, this attitude of erasing the stain of the Orient can be seen today how European powers formulate their foreign policies relating to Middle Eastern countries, and also all non-Western countries, but that's a whole nother argument. But the idea of the Orient is a land and cultures that need to be feared and controlled, that the people of the Orient need to imitate the West to be successful and to be seen as members of the modern world. But when they do try to conform to Western ideas, they're measured up to this impossible bar that they're never going to be able to succeed because all the odds are stacked against them, because no matter how hard they try to become European, that stain of the Orient is still going to be there. In how we don't take a nuanced view of the Middle East or the Orient at this time. We forget that they had rich cultures and history, and they had ethnic and religious diversity in this region, and instead we just paint it as one homogenous group, which it's not. And I'm not going to lecture about this because I don't think historians should ever lecture on morality, but I'm not a historian yet, so I'm going to. So I think that we have to change our attitude of how we look at the Middle East, because they deserve, not that they deserve it because they're special, because everyone deserves for their history to be told in a complex way, because we are complex people and we're complex cultures. And I think hopefully by learning more about Orientalism and its effects and studying the Middle East with a broader mind, that hopefully we will be able to actually be able to learn something from them and strive for a better future, working together, and end the cycle of mistakes and falsehoods that have been repeated in the past. So with all of that said, I hope you enjoyed this video. I'll see you for the next one. Bye!